Hello once again. To start off proceedings, we have with us Kayla Isabel for our opening keynote. Kayla is a CEO of Startup Canada, the national rallying community supporting and giving the voice to Canada's 3.5 million entrepreneurs. Kayla has dedicated her career to supporting entrepreneurs both in Canada and internationally. Kayla is an award-winning strategic communications consultant and change management facilitator and is passionate about leveraging the power of storytelling in the entrepreneurial community. An advocate for women in leaders, Kayla is also a host of the Thrive podcast focused on providing resources to women entrepreneurs across Canada. Kayla is a board chair of the Innovators and Entrepreneurs Foundation, president of the International Association of Business Communicators, Ottawa chapter, and a former board member of the Canadian Public Relations Society. With a passion for mentorship, Kayla runs the IABC Members Connect mentorship program, is Carleton University Network Mentor, and Ottawa Community Immigrant Services Organization Career Mentor. Kayla has also worked as a coach at the World Skills Employment Center for newcomers to Canada and as a volunteer with the Darkness into Light Suicide Prevention Initiative. Today, Kayla will be sharing her insights on entrepreneurship, the key to economic recovery. Welcome, Kayla. Over to you.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much, Vitaly, for inviting me. Thank you to the entire Startup Bridge organization. I think the videos at the beginning of today's session just demonstrate how inspiring and encouraging both the Canadian ecosystem is, but also within the Indian space as well. So very, very excited to be here today and share a little bit about Startup Canada and what we're seeing within the Canadian ecosystem during what we all know to be an unprecedented time. So I'm delighted to share a few pieces of information about what we're seeing within our community. So I'll quickly share my screen and we'll get going on the presentation. So in terms of, choose the application or tab. Apologies, I think I might be blocked on sharing my screen. I'm not sure if this is visible at the moment. Are you able to see the presentation that's being shared? Yes, okay, fabulous. Thank you for that. So we'll dive right in. So as I was introduced, my name is Kayla Isabel, and I am the CEO at Startup Canada. And Startup Canada is really the national rallying voice of the entrepreneurship community, coast to coast to coast. So we represent the interests of both the local ecosystem, smaller subsets of entrepreneurs within both rural communities, larger ecosystems and urban centers, but we really provide a framing and a space for all of them to connect at the national level and represent Canada on the global stage. So Startup Canada is really that convening body that brings together all of the different accelerators, incubators, other entrepreneur support organizations, and gives every entrepreneur a soft place to land right when they're starting out. We know that building a business is not an easy task, and in Canada there are so many different supports that can be activated. So Startup Canada's role in the ecosystem is really to be that initial point of entry to then support entrepreneurs depending on the industry that they're looking to get support on, specific mentors they're looking to reach out to, and really just providing that one-stop shop so that they have an easy access point, because entrepreneurship is hard enough to navigate. In terms of our programming, I thought it would be helpful just to illustrate a few of our key program areas, because I think they are indicative of where we see the most movement and attention being paid in the Canadian space. We've been doing a lot of work around the Sustainable Development Goals and supporting entrepreneurs who are looking to align to the SDGs. So those are the International Sustainable Development Goals mandated by the United Nations. And so we've seen a really interesting movement in the Canadian ecosystem to align both nonprofit and for-profit businesses to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll speak to that in a little while, but I think that's a really interesting evolution that we're also seeing, particularly because of COVID, that businesses are building back better and building back with this mindset of both sustainability from a business perspective, but global sustainability around climate change, gender equality, etc. We're also seeing that the requirements for support are more so than ever. During COVID, there were a number of government supports, a number of new initiatives from private sector partners and nonprofits, but we still have a long way to go to make sure that we're equipping entrepreneurs with the support they need. So I'll speak to that momentarily. Our focus areas in terms of programming are focused on women, going global, and being a voice to government. So I'll speak to that briefly, but this gives you a sense of all of the great things that we do at Startup Canada. In terms of our nation and building a really strong nation for entrepreneurs, I think Canada is really leading in this space. Sometimes, our southern border partner gets a little bit more attention with Silicon Valley, et cetera. But really, as Canadians, we have an incredible opportunity to encourage and support both the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem, but representing them on the global stage. What we're seeing within our census data, so in terms of Startup Canada's surveying, we do an annual survey that really gives us a finger on the pulse on what is happening in entrepreneurship on an annual level. We are seeing diversity in the ecosystem more than ever, and that with an expanding base of newcomers. So based on our data actually from 2020, so our new census will be coming out shortly, 15% of our Startup Canada membership came from newcomers. So those that have either permanent residency in Canada, those that are citizens, or those that are planning on coming to Canada and build businesses here. So we're definitely seeing a big boom with newcomers who are entrepreneurial and who are looking to bring their businesses from their various countries into Canada or start new businesses in Canada. We're also seeing a big boom in terms of solopreneurs and small business. And this always has been the backbone of the Canadian economy. The wonderful large organizations that are built and these incredible unicorns that we see that create jobs at scale are an important subset. But what we see most often is these sole proprietors, these solopreneurs, as we call them, who are potentially building one or two jobs through their businesses, but creating livelihoods for themselves. So that's really where Startup Canada's network is strongest. As I mentioned, we're seeing an increase in for-profit social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship in general, and Canadian entrepreneurs either resonating or wanting to build businesses that align to the Sustainable Development Goals. And interestingly, this is not just in the nonprofit space, and more predominantly in the for-profit space, which is a really encouraging path that we're seeing moving forward. In terms of barriers within the Canadian ecosystem, similarly to what we hear at the global level, Canadians are generally frustrated with the lack of financing options and the perception with investors that they are potentially a little bit more risk averse compared to our American counterparts, and that there are not financial options available for early stage startups. This is a piece of information we hear time and time again. In terms of government funding, there are a number of hoops to jump through. So this is a space that Startup Canada is working actively on in terms of advocacy and lobbying. And really just eliminating these barriers to support in whatever way we can, either through training and support or in terms of advocacy and lobbying that we do to the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. But all in all, Canadians want to scale up. They want to take their businesses. They have global aspirations. They want to be building globally competitive businesses. But what we need to do is make sure that that foundation is solid so that they can then develop more scalable potential through these more solid businesses. In terms of industries, we see ICT being one of our most popular industries that we serve, professional, scientific, and technical services, arts, entertainment, and media, healthcare, trade, education, and a number of different spaces. So what this really illustrates is Canada is a nation of entrepreneurs for every entrepreneur, not just the booming tech startups, not just those working in fintech, not just those in healthcare. There's space within the Canadian ecosystem for every entrepreneur that has aspirations across all of these different industries. And what you'll see within the Canadian ecosystem is there is targeted support for many specific industries. So further to the video earlier, if you're a tech startup trying to start up in Canada, there are fantastic accelerators, fantastic incubators, great communities of support, but there's also additional support across all of these other areas. In terms of business type, most are operating with for-profit businesses, mostly, as I mentioned, with that shift to sustainability and social development, but business types still being more predominantly in the for-profit enterprise space. So this just gives you a bit of a highlight of what our nation of entrepreneurs looks like. But I think based on what we're seeing at the moment, there is a huge opportunity that as we rebuild our economy at the moment, obviously COVID has had an unprecedented impact on the entrepreneurship community, particularly these sole proprietors, these solopreneurs who either did not have staff, so they didn't qualify for some of the government supports. They were very early stage and didn't have established revenue, so they weren't qualifying for those supports in that space. But as we try to rebuild the economy, this is a wonderful opportunity to assess what is working well, what we need to improve, and collaboratively really fill in those gaps. And this both being in the Canadian ecosystem and internationally, that I think groups like Startup Bridge now doing these digital types of programming, educating, connecting, we do have a really great opportunity to use this time to build back a more sustainable base for our entrepreneurship community. As I mentioned, about 98% of Canadian businesses have fewer than 500 employees. So that's a fairly compelling stat to showcase, the types of support that we need to start up and scale. In terms of other components as well, making sure that our government is investing in a highly skilled workforce. And I think this is a unique opportunity within the international ecosystem, bringing skilled and trained entrepreneurs that have a global perspective, that have that global mindset, bringing them into the Canadian ecosystem and promoting export promotion. It's a huge focus of the Canadian government at the moment in terms of exporting from the small and medium enterprise community and from entrepreneurs at large. So to the extent that we really create this global fabric of entrepreneurs that are connected, that can leverage lessons learned in the international space, and that support a global entrepreneurship economy. At the Canadian level, we're already starting to make that shift. But I think partnerships like this and really having these conversations across borders, it provides us with that foundation. So I think we have a lot of great work to do, but it's encouraging to see these types of movements. In terms of programming, as I mentioned, Startup Canada has a number of programs that are both open to Canadian entrepreneurs and those that are coming as newcomers as well. As I said, about 15% of our network identify as newcomers, so there's already an existing base within those spaces. I'll briefly run through this because I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we have a women's entrepreneurship program that provides mentorship, support, funding information, learning about e-commerce, advocacy to government, so making sure we're championing what women entrepreneurs need during times like this, both from a financial perspective, in terms of flexibility, in terms of the barriers that women and mothers are feeling during COVID with the additional responsibilities they're taking on. So a very large component of Startup Canada's programming is focused on women entrepreneurs. We also focus tremendously in the social impact space, both on the storytelling side and providing practical information from the Government of Canada. So if there are any entrepreneurs that are looking to come into the Canadian ecosystem, there are tremendous amounts of both funding opportunities through the Investment Readiness Program from the Government of Canada, and in what we're seeing in new accelerators, new incubators that are popping up with a social impact mindset. So this is certainly a growing place that if this does align with your business, or if you're interested in exploring that further within the Canadian space, this is something that I can see everyone doubling down from private sector and public sector as well, working in the social impact space. As I mentioned, we also have our Canadian Export Challenge and our ambitions to help Canadian entrepreneurs start and scale globally competitive businesses. And this year, we're taking much more of an international approach, connecting Canadian entrepreneurs with international representation and looking at it from an export perspective, but also creating this global fabric of a stronger entrepreneurship ecosystem at the international level. So you can definitely stay tuned for more information on that, but we always have some great speakers. We had Michelle Romanow from our Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian Shark Tank, so a great pitch competition that celebrates entrepreneurs within our ecosystem. But this global narrative is something that we all collectively can contribute to actively. It also includes a pitch competition, so it's a great moment to see what types of businesses Canadians are building. And we have great representation from newcomers in this pitch competition as well. So I believe 4 out of our 12 finalists were newcomers coming to Canada and bringing fantastic ideas. And this just shows you some of these groups as well, and a tremendous representation from newcomers in our panels. In terms of entrepreneur profile, these were just a handful of stats of those in Canada who have global aspirations, who want to build those globally competitive businesses. Many are early stage, and many are around consumer goods, knowledge-based industries, and services or non-industrial industries here. So I just thought that could be a helpful stat just to see what types of global ambitions they have, and the top export destinations as well, being the US, UK, Australia, Germany, and France. So the last piece that I wanted to focus on during today's conversation was the power of community. And I know in many of these keynote presentations and the speakers that you've been hearing from so far, there are programs and practical support and mentorship and these formalized entities within the Canadian ecosystem that can help you and bridge you into the space. One of Startup Canada's key strengths is that while we have Startup Canada headquarters in Ottawa, representing the national ecosystem, we also have chapters across Canada that provide a local perspective and potentially an industry-specific perspective. So this being, Startup Vancouver, Startup Halifax, Startup Peel Region, Startup groups that specialize with women, so the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce. They're all connected through this startup community fabric that gives us both the perspectives from various local ecosystems, but from a much wider variety of entrepreneurs. And this, I think, is a really key strength of the Canadian space, is that while we provide education, inspiration, practical tools and resources, the power of the Canadian community is incredibly strong. And you'll find that in talking to Canadian entrepreneurs, the interest in helping, the interest in mentoring and supporting, and that every door is the right door for so many entrepreneur support organizations that you'll connect with in Canada. This is something that we're incredibly proud of, and that at Startup Canada makes us a world leader in supporting the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So in terms of, coming to Canada, you both have national entities that can support you in doing so, but you also have these great landing points within these local local communities that can help you in that space. So I have a very brief video, it's only about 60 seconds long, that talks a little bit more about our Startup Canada community. So perhaps I can ask you to click on that video if you're able to.
Hey, Kyla, can you stop sharing your screen so that I can play that video? Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
It takes a community to support a startup, and it takes a nation working together to start up Canada. This is why Startup Canada is proud to support Canada's 3.5 million entrepreneurs through a network of 50 grassroots startup communities. The winner of the 2019 Startup Canada Community Award is Startup Peel Region, the go-to network for budding entrepreneurs. Startup Peel Region has helped launch more than 2,000 entrepreneurs with the help of 25 support partners, including LATAM Startups and the Brampton Entrepreneur Center. This booming entrepreneurial community is led by entrepreneur Melanie Campbell, who is a champion of women-led companies and a voice to government advocating for Canada's entrepreneurs. Along with Startup Peel Region's team, Melanie Campbell actively promotes Canada on the global stage, champions local entrepreneurs to government leaders, and provides Peel Region's entrepreneurs with round-the-clock support. Startup Peel Region is a proven model for entrepreneur-driven ecosystem building and entrepreneurial success.
Perfect. There we go. So hopefully that was a bit of inspiration for you. That represents our Startup Canada community. In that, you're not just connecting with organizations. You're really connecting with people in Canada, and I think that's a huge strength that we are incredibly proud to bring to the table, and that we continue to develop and expand, particularly during COVID. Now that we have digital spaces where we can come together. We have these incredible opportunities to build back better businesses that have a stronger foundation, that are better connected, better mentored, better supported, and that really will stabilize our economy moving forward, making sure that the backbone, our small businesses and our entrepreneurship community are reinforced so that we have a stronger country economically and that is more competitive at the global level as well. So happy to answer any questions, connect with anybody who's interested in learning more, and make any connections within the Canadian ecosystem. But I want to thank everyone today for joining me this morning. Thank you to Startup Bridge for hosting Startup Canada here. And we have incredible work ahead of us. So happy to be supporting both of our ecosystems actively. And best of luck, everyone.